A veteran corner has signed elsewhere, and I think it's a big break for the Dolphins, plus the latest update on the Jalen Ramsey situation here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Here on the Locked On Network, I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, we're looking at the Jaire Alexander news that dropped. We're looking at the latest courtesy of a West Coast program that hosted Jalen Ramsey recently. And we're looking at training camp dates. Terron Armstead launches a YouTube channel. The Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions back-to-back. A little bit of thoughts on a lot of different things here today on the show. And that's kind of mid-June content for you in a nutshell. So let's start with the Jaire Alexander news because that obviously was the big news that came out today. And it's a quarterback that's off the board for the Dolphins. And I want to start with this up front. The prospect of signing Jaire Alexander was not an attractive one to me for a team in Miami that is trying to transition away from a lot of the things that Jaire Alexander is as a football player at this stage of his career. There's a durability concern there. There's a player that was suspended for conduct detrimental to the team for naming himself a captain and going out and almost messing up the coin toss. This is a player that is a short-term Band-Aid that even if it goes well, the long-term payoff is not there with Jaire Alexander. So when you look at it through the lens of if it made sense for the Dolphins, if you were going to tell me that a corner was going to sign, Jaire Alexander would have been the name that I hoped would sign elsewhere and do so expeditiously. And I think that's the big break for the Dolphins is Alexander is signing with the Baltimore Ravens on a one-year contract worth $4 million with an extra $2 million in incentive. So it's up to $6 million in total value of the contract. You can get into this from a couple different layers, but let's start with the first and foremost, the obvious one. The Ravens have not been a team that's been attached to the Jalen Ramsey market with the exception of a couple Ravens fan posts on Twitter. They have not shown any tangible interest. They had not been reported to be interested or in the market. Did they need an upgrade at corner 2, which was before the signing of Jaire Alexander, technically Chidobe Awuzie, because Marlon Humphrey was going to play inside? Yeah. But for it to be a player in the corner market that was not a player affiliated with Jalen Ramsey is a break for Miami. And the concern was, well, why would you go after Jalen Ramsey when you can go after Jaire Alexander? Well, Alexander kind of went off the board to a team that had a special connection because Alexander played his college ball with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson publicly advocated for the Ravens to sign Alexander just yesterday during minicamp. The Ravens are in minicamp right now. And I technically think the signing's a little out of character for Baltimore too, and I get it. Like, you're in a win-now window. You're trying to compete to win. So getting a corner on a fair market deal, it was reported that he had other dollars that exceeded what he signed for in Baltimore, but chose to go there in part because of the relationship with Lamar Jackson. You tip your cap. But Baltimore's a team that's currently in preliminary talks with extending Lamar. They need to get an extension done with Kyle Hamilton. They need to get an extension done with Tyler Linderbaum. They need to get an extension done with Travis Jones. They need to get an extension done with either Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely or both players. Odafe Owe, they need to get an extension done for. They've got a lot of names that need addressing with their contracts, and choosing to go the Jaire Alexander route on a one-year, $4 million deal with the questions that Jaire has just kind of flies in the face a little bit of what Eric DeCosta's been all about. And we'll see if it pays off. If it's going to pay off, it's going to be because Alexander is available at a significantly higher rate than what he has been the last couple of years. And all those things combined, it's like, let it be somebody else's bet to place. So I think the biggest break for Miami out of all of this is not that the corner that I wasn't interested in signing is gone. It's that he went quickly, right? I mean, Jaire was cut 2 weeks ago. And he's the first off the board, and he lands with a team in which he's willing to take less money, and that, I think, sets a floor for kind of where the Dolphins can look to and expect to spend money with their own free agent that they may be interested in exploring and making offers to, and incentive dollars stacked on top of a base salary, and what that looks like with a player that had injury questions and isn't necessarily in the prime of his career anymore. Even though he's still not an older guy at 28, I mean, that's should be the prime of your career, but Jaire's body has been through a lot of injuries in the last couple of years. So I think it sets a favorable price point for the Dolphins with whatever corner they do end up signing. I think it sets in motion, potentially, some other corners to get a feel for what the market look like, and then have an appetite, maybe some of those players start to sign. Maybe it can grease the wheels a little bit for if you were worried, Jaire's going to cut the Jalen Ramsey stuff out at the knees. That's off the table now because it's like he was never on the market. It's just Baltimore, who was not a player in this sweepstakes in the first place, got a new corner. That's a break for the Dolphins. As far as I'm concerned, that's a break for the Dolphins. Now, the price point for Jaire at $4 million with $2 million in incentives up to $6 million, that does not do the Dolphins any favors in one big way, and we're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Dolphins, so make sure you guys stick with us. We'll be right back. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, all at your fingertips at a moment's notice, it is super easy to lose track. And it's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility control over all of your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You track all your accounts, your investments, and spending all in one place so you can stop managing your money and start actually building your wealth. It might be an eye-opener for you when you use the app to discover just how much those two-door delivery services are costing you on a monthly basis. And if you're like me, you can find that number out and make some adjustments. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. The price point for moving Jalen Ramsey, right? And this is a nice segue into the second half of Corner Watch that we're dealing with right now, which just gives me a migraine. I wrote a story on this for A to Z today, and the caption when I shared it online was, "This is the song that never ends." What is that, Lamb Chop? If you're familiar, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're probably younger than the age of 30, you have no idea. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about. Maybe somebody else recycled it. It's literally a song that just, it goes on and on. It's literally the song that never ends. Jalen Ramsey watch. Oh, wow. And now Jalen Ramsey, UCLA Bruins football shared that Ramsey's been working out at the Wasserman Athletic Center on campus at UCLA, which, if you're willing to just reach up and connect a few dots, UCLA stands for what? University of California, Los Angeles, LA Rams. Sean McVay talking in Maui at Rams minicamp about Jalen Ramsey with a quote that talked about some of the barriers that are in place that prevent it from becoming a reality. Even though McVay just last week politely kind of declined the idea that they were going to be interested in Jaire Alexander at all. So I want to get the full quote from Sean McVay. But equally as important as the quote from McVay and how this compounds is the Alexander domino falling at the price point at which it does is not really going to help the Dolphins' case to convince somebody to eat all the salary, even though there's a significant difference, I think, at this point in their careers of, I think Ramsey's still a better player, and Ramsey does not have the durability elements. And you're probably looking at a one-year rental unless you want to do multiple years with Ramsey and probably give him a new guarantee structure next year if you bring him on board. This is what Sean McVay had to say about Jalen Ramsey and the update during Rams minicamp this week. I definitely don't want to rule anything out because we're always open-minded in onboarding and acquiring quality players and people like him, being Ramsey, if we're able to do that. But there would be some obstacles that are real, that are in place of maybe preventing that from occurring. So, cool posturing, dude. Like, very clearly, they would like to acquire Jalen Ramsey, but the obstacles are how much money Jalen Ramsey is owed. We're in a staring contest here. And when you're in a staring contest and the other party sees a corner come off the board that's an accomplished player for up to $6 million, they're probably going to pick up the phone and call you and be like, hey, dude, you guys want to pay a little bit more of this? Because we're not paying $21 million. So it's put the Dolphins in a tough spot in that regard. So while the Alexander domino giveth, it in this case explicitly with the Rams, I think also giveth away. Where if I were the Dolphins, and I understand if I was running the team, I would then have to pick up the phone whenever whatever is done and explain to the owner how he's going to have to write a check for X amount more money to get rid of a player that we just gave this contract adjustment to in the first place less than a year ago. And that's probably going to be a pretty awkward conversation. So I get why it's not done. I'm over it, right? And, here we are another day that ends in Y talking about Jalen Ramsey. And it's news because Ramsey's out working out in California, specifically at the UCLA football facility after not attending the offseason program and having an excused absence from OTAs, an excused absence from minicamp. Then the question kind of becomes, why is Jalen in California? Is Jalen in California because Jalen wants to be in California? Is Jalen in California because he wants to be with the Rams? Is Jalen in California because he still has the house out there, which we saw him going through the homebound process during Hard Knocks in 2020 when the Chargers and Rams split it? Why is he out there? And it could very easily just be the simple explanation of, well, he has a house out there and he likes it out there and he doesn't want to be in Miami because he's ticked off and doesn't want to be in Miami. But until the Dolphins find a destination for Jalen Ramsey that is not the LA Rams, every breadcrumb that you get that leads back to Los Angeles with Jalen Ramsey should be that much more fuel for you to believe that the holdup here is the team that's most interested in Jalen Ramsey, the team that Jalen Ramsey probably most wants to go to himself, is the Los Angeles Rams. And Sean McVay is not doing himself any favors to get this to go away because he keeps saying, yeah, we really like Jalen Ramsey. But there's some stuff in the way that needs to get sorted out and it might not happen. And the fact that he keeps going public with it and keeps drumming it up and keeps pointing out these hurdles, I think just underscores the reality that, the hurdles in place here is the Rams don't want to pay any money that they don't have to. And they think they've got the Dolphins by the you-know-what. And in one hand, they do. The Dolphins really need somebody else to come in with a strong offer to either move the Rams off their spot or for the Dolphins to take the alternative offer. Now, there's been multiple teams that have called. From what I understand, there were multiple teams that kind of reignited those conversations after June 1st passed. Some of those teams have not publicly been reported. There's interest in a bunch of spots. But until somebody, either the Dolphins come up with what they're willing to pay or somebody gets desperate because the dominoes start falling elsewhere, and that's kind of an awkward spot for the Dolphins to be unless the Dolphins can strike the first land, right? And maybe somebody that's on the free agent market sees, well, Jaire Alexander got up to 6. I'm probably not going to get less than that. The Dolphins are offering 4. Let me sign for 4. Because I know I'm going to play there. And that's what I think you go back to things that are in Miami's favor and things that are not in Miami's favor. The situation of the corners, if you're a well-established starting player, you have to look at the situation that the Dolphins have in their secondary and say, I know darn well they got a good pass rush and they have an opportunity. I can play there. And that I can turn into potentially another opportunity. And I think I can showcase myself well there. So maybe they're waiting for Ramsey to come off the books. Maybe they're waiting for a different player to see the dollar amount that pushes them to accept a lingering offer that exists out there. And I don't know what those dollar amounts are. But Corner Watch continues. But if you were worried, that the main theme of the story is this. If you were worried about the Jaire Alexander existence on the market complicating things for the Dolphins, that book is closed, right? Now, I want to give a little shout out to Terron Armstead. I want to get into training camp dates, which I have up here. I want to make sure if you're interested in going to training camp, you know what that process looks like. We're getting into that next here on Locked on Dolphins, so make sure you guys stick with us. Let's start first and foremost with the training camp dates that the Dolphins have released. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 open public practices with an asterisk where one of the 11 is member day for season ticket holders, right? And if you're a season ticket holder and you're interested in going to that one, you should have an email in your inbox about the procedure for Member Day, which is on Saturday, August 2nd. The first open public practice is Saturday, July 26th, 9 a.m. All of these are at 9 a.m. in the first block before the team hits the road and goes, it's Chicago and Detroit are the two teams that they have the joint practices with back-to-back weeks. Saturday, July 26th through Wednesday, August 6th. It's the 26th, which is Saturday. Monday, the 28th, which is probably going to be the first day of pads. Tuesday, the 29th. Wednesday, the 30th. They're off on Thursday. They're on Friday, the 1st. They're on Saturday, the 2nd. That is Member Day. They're on Sunday, the 3rd. Then they're off 2 days until August 6th for the open practices. And then they're away until Tuesday, August 19th. That's the 2 weeks where they're on the road for road preseason games and having joint practice elsewhere. On Wednesday, August 20th. And then the only public joint practice this year, Thursday, August 21st against Jacksonville, is the last public practice is the only one that is a joint practice this season. So that's, if you're interested in going, you have to go to MiamiDolphins.com and you have to claim tickets. They are limited availability. So if you want to go to camp on any given day of those dates that we've disclosed, be proactive and go about doing so sooner rather than later. From everybody that I have spoken to, and obviously when I go down to camp, I go down as credentialed media, so I'm not a part of the reserving tickets and going in on public member day and all that stuff. And I have a different process individually that I go through when I go down for camp. But everybody that I talk to has really great things to say about the experience. And obviously the training center there, Baptist Health Training Center, it's overshade, so you aren't going to be sitting out there being exposed to the elements in the dog days of summer, although they've moved the practice time up a little bit, so it should help in that regard as well. So if you're thinking about it, now's a great year to make the jump. And there's less enthusiasm around the team right now, so maybe you will have, if you're catching this late, a chance to get a selection for whatever day of training camp that you want. But I think it's up to 1,500 people that they let in for each public practice. If off the top of my head, that number is coming to me correctly. I want to give a shout out to Terron Armstead, who dropped his first behind the scenes kind of end of final season YouTube video on a YouTube channel that he has started. And it gave a great look at Terron and the build-up to his last home game against San Francisco. He talked about, or they gave a spotlight on the Christmas shopping giveaway for the kids with the foundation. You got a chance to see some behind-the-scenes look at the last dinner, like the veteran dinner at Terron's house before the San Francisco game. You got a chance to look at Terron talking about his end of career experiences and his career experiences and what he's gone through. And you hear from his dad and you hear from some of the Dolphins teammates, including Patrick Paul, about what he's learned from Patrick Paul. It's a very cool look behind the curtain of a very accomplished player and what the final few pages of his final chapter as an NFL player look like. So I highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't. It's about 10 minutes long, so it's not super long commitment for your day. But a behind-the-scenes look from Terron Armstead, courtesy of Terron Armstead, about that process in which you could kind of tell, in my opinion, just looking at how they recorded things and what the conversations were like. I think Terron probably had a better idea than maybe he wanted to admit because of how much he loves the game, that he had reached the end of his path as a player. But still, obviously, very relevant to the Dolphins because you get a look at a bunch of guys that are on the roster still from how they approached the build-up to the last home game of the year last year. That's going to do it for me here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Wednesday. I will be back again tomorrow. We'll see what news comes our way. And if not, we'll have some topics to talk about regardless to get you ready for the 2025 season. I am Kyle Krabs, and I'm out of here.